So I analyzed Down on the Street by the Stooges, and I learned a few things. The verse is a great example of how to anchor the listener to the rhythm. And it does this with a different kind of repetition. There's a repetition of pitches, and then what this uses is a repetition of rhythms. And so if we look at the verse, we'll see that there's an accent on the end of beat 2. So if you have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we see all of these phrases, the first 6 phrases of the verse, they all accent the end of 2.
Down on the street where the beat is shine.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and
Floating it around the
1 and 2
blue
and
light.
2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4
Feel
and
pretty thing.
1 and 2 and
Feel
1 and 2
pretty
and
thing.
1 and 2 and so this repetition is good to anchor us and create a sense of consistency, but it can also become monotonous over time. And so they use something to break our expectations. So if we look at the first 2 motifs, we see that they're pretty long, around 2 bars. And then after those first 2 phrases, we have a shortening of these motifs, right? So now they're around 1 bar. And so that's what we call fragmentation, which is just shortening the units of motifs. And if we zoom out, we can see that a pattern is emerging here. The pattern is that first accents the flat third, the G, and then we accent the root, E. And then again the third, and then the tonic, the third, the tonic. Another thing I thought was interesting is how Iggy sometimes bends down on these ending notes. So he does like one here.
Floating it around on the blue light.
Yeah, mine. And then again here, I think.
Ain't no wall.
And so that kind of downward bend, sometimes we call that a fall, and it just kind of adds a little bit of flavor. Because as you're bending through the wrong note, you know? You start on the right note, on the home note, but it doesn't just settle in a wall. It just adds a nice little flavor to it. And then we have the hook, which adds a lot of energy. And how does it do that? By jumping up an octave.
Pretty thing. Ain't no wall. No wall. No wall. No wall.
And to jump up such a huge range, it creates a good bit of surprise, right? It's a nice little hook. And how do you make a hook? Is basically through repetition and then some kind of change. It's not just repeating. It's usually some kind of change. Maybe you do something 3 times and then vary it on the 4th time. In this case, it's 3 times and then space on the 4th time. And it's that little break in expectations from the repetition, right? The repetition establishes some kind of pattern, and then to break from that extra bit of surprise is a little dopamine kick. And we can also see that compared to the verses, these units are even shorter. So we went from a 2-bar motif, and then 2 bars of space, 2-bar motif, 2-bar space, then 1-bar motif, 1 bar space, right? So it's shortening that. It's fragmenting that. And then the hook is just a 1-bar motif. So this shortening, this helps to create like a sense of forward motion. And another bit of change that creates a little more surprise is that they shift the place of the accent. So here in the verse, we were always accenting the end of beat 2. Here, we're accenting the end of beat 4. So it comes a little bit before we would expect it to. It's what we call rhythmic displacement, right? Displacing where the rhythm occurs, or where we accent that rhythm. So listen again from the end of the verse, and see how it comes a little bit earlier.
Feel pretty thing. Ain't no wall. No wall. No wall. No wall.
So that's the vocals. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the guitar. And the guitar is also doing a kind of fragmentation where the main riff in the verse is a 4-bar thing, And in the chorus, it's a 1-bar thing, right? So it's almost like 2 levels of fragmentation. Instead of going from 4 to 2, just go straight from 4 to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this guitar is repeating it 3 times on the hook, but then on the 4th time it changes it up, right? See, again, that same principle about when you want to create a hook, you want to have some repetition, but then some kind of change that deviates from that in some kind of way. And so I'm going to close out with a quote from Iggy Pop. He says, "My general take on American music since 1969 is that it's just getting stiffer, and people are getting more uptight. Audience, performance, and palace guard." Like and subscribe if you disagree with Adolf Hitler.